I do want to say, first and foremost, that any of the discussion that we have had has nothing to do with you personally. I did meet you for about an hour. I thought you were lovely, very nice to be around, and but unfortunately, that isn't what I base decisions that are the future of the city on. I wish it were, because it wouldn't be a question. There wouldn't be a question in my mind. I am happy that we have this opportunity to chat with you. I have quite a few questions, as you can imagine, and since I've only been given 10 minutes initially, I ask that you just try to answer them as simply as possible so we don't run time. The reason that we have flow charts down here is, you know what these are, clearly. These are organizational charts for, I think it's Louisville, Lexington, Cincinnati, if I'm right. They should be in that order.
Yes.
For the publics, because I kept having to go back to the flow charts to figure out how many reports you had, what your duties were, and more specifically, I will say the city manager form of government. Have you been in a city manager form of government prior to applying for this position?
No.
Okay, so you've been a direct report to the mayor, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever have, in any of these positions, have you ever had 9, 10 bosses that make decisions for you?
Yes.
And how did that work? If, in other words, if you worked directly for the mayor, how did you actually have somebody who wasn't, you didn't have to report directly to make a decision for you?
Well, in each of my previous positions, both in Lexington and Louisville, the City Council in Lexington and the Board of Aldermen in Louisville, where they control the purse strings, so they have the power to vote over the budget. And so interacting with them around budgetary matters, around specific programming items. In Louisville, for example, they were elected by district. So I interacted with them as it relates to programming they wanted to see happen in their particular districts. In Lexington, it's both district and at large. So you've got 12 by district and 3 at large.
Okay.
So
How many people did you have as direct reports in Louisville and then in Lexington?
in Lexington, I have 20.
Okay, what about Louisville?
In Louisville, I think about 14.
Okay. Do you know how many you'll have in Cincinnati? Have you talked to anyone about that?
Well, I know that there's 17 departments here and that you currently have 2 assistant city managers. So depending on how the portfolio is divided, I could say 19, but as I have looked on the website and seen that right now, some of the assistant city managers oversee some of the departments. That's how it's structured presently.
Okay, what is the largest budget that you've ever been personally responsible for in your positions with Louisville and Lexington?
Largest budget's probably about $460 million.
And that was where?
Louisville, and the budget that I have now is $411 million in Lexington.
Okay. And that is budget that you're directly responsible for?
Yes.
Okay. When you, before you left, did they ask you to stay in Louisville? The new mayor or any of the new administration?
No.
Okay. You've been mentioning a few times about a strategic plan, but you haven't articulated what exactly you implemented as a strategic plan. Can you give me an outline of what that is exactly? We've had a couple of people ask questions, and you've answered why you implemented a strategic plan, but didn't articulate what that was. And so I'm curious as to what exactly your strategic plan was.
Well, Are you talking about as it relates to government or just generically?
The government, I guess, because it did come from Mr. Berding's questioning.
The strategic planning that we did within government related to various departments, community development, community services. The city of Louisville and the Lexington-Fayette Urban County government do not operate from a developed, written strategic plan.
So we couldn't get a copy of one.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
If I said I'd like to see it in, in paper form, is there a copy of your strategic plan anywhere?
For Lexington?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, what about Louisville?
I'm not sure now, what they have, but that is not how they operated in the past.
Okay.
The closest to a strategic plan that the governments have is what we call a consolidated plan, which we are going through the consolidated planning process in Lexington right now.
Right. Well, you mentioned community development, community services, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, what about for those departments? Are there written strategic plans for those departments?
They're having those were in Louisville. They're having the past. I'm not sure what they have now. We don't do a strategic plan document in Lexington.
So when you talk about having implemented a strategic plan, if you've implemented one, there's nothing in writing that shows us that I can actually look at and say, okay, this is what he did, and okay, that looks good, or it doesn't.
If you are asking for a copy of any strategic plan that I have been involved in developing, there are documents I can provide. If you're asking me, can I provide you with a strategic plan for the government in general, no, there is not.
No, I'm talking about where you've been, not like the government in general. But
Well, I meant
okay.
Lexington and Louisville,
Yes.
the total government. They did not operate from a developed strategic plan.
Okay. You've spoken a couple of times, one somebody asked you, I can't remember, it was Mr. Berding, or you asked how you would work with council when you came here, and you said you would meet with council collectively, and I was curious as to what you meant by that. That was how you put it in terms. You said, I will meet with council collectively, I will meet with the mayor and council different times. What did you mean by that?
What I meant by that was I would meet with the mayor and meet with you to determine if there is a particular level of expectation, or what your level of expectation is for the city manager, both collectively and individually.
When you say collectively, what do you mean by collectively?
With you as a seated body.
Would that be a public hearing? I mean, would it be a
It would be a
forum?
public meeting. I don't know
Okay.
if it'd be a
So
hearing.
we'd have to sit here like this and tell you what we were looking for in a meeting like this. I just want to make sure you realize we don't have executive session in Cincinnati, so unfortunately, we're not permitted to go behind closed doors and do anything as a collective group.
I'm aware of.
Okay.
I wasn't referring to behind closed doors.
Okay. Mr. Cranley asked you how you would reduce the homicide rate. If we gave you a goal of what we wanted it to be at a certain time, could you meet that goal, assuming it wasn't to zero, because that's probably not realistic?
It would depend on what that is. I couldn't tell you. If you said, for example, if the homicide rate is at 100 and I want you to have it at 40, can you meet that goal? I don't know if we could or not.